a few months ago, Mark Carney said Muslim values are Canadian values, but are they? Are they even compatible with Canada at all? Tonight's panel is going there. Welcome to Source One Saturday Night Mashup. My name is Nico Lagan. My co-host, as always, Jason Lavigne. And our guest this week, Jeff Evely, Pastor Artur Pawlowski, Jason from WireTap Media, and Nadine Wellwood. Unfortunately, Tajana was not able to join us because she got called in. She actually had to work tonight. But Nadine stepped in last minute, so thank you very much. We needed feminine energy because there's not a lot of hair and not a lot of feminine energy on this panel, so thank you for being here. We'll start, as always, by a round table. So let's start with Nadine. Nadine, you want to tell the people out there who you are, what you do, and yeah.
Sure. Well, not the first time I've had to step into something because I had the right parts.
Or not.
Or not. Nadine Wellwood, author of Alberta Rising, and of course, political advocate here for Alberta independence. I've been involved in politics for quite some time, an entrepreneur, aerospace and defense, as well as finance for the last 20 plus years. And I've been podcasting and sharing my views and opinions broadly here about a number of different issues, and happy to step in tonight and share more, a more feminine perspective, I guess.
Thanks for being here. So next in line, Pastor Artur Pawlowski.
Well, my name is Artur Pawlowski. I am a Polish immigrant. I emigrated here in 1995 after spending 5 years in Greece. So I pastored 2 churches here. I am heavily involved in politics all my life, from Poland to Greece to Canada right now. And I preach the truth. I am still a leader of a political entity here, Solidarity Movement of Alberta, and I do intend to run in the next provincial election. I already have lots of candidates that are interested to run, and my primary job, if you will, a mission in life, is to take care of the poor. So we are working with the most vulnerable. We feed thousands of people every single week for the past 26 years. That makes me very old now. Just doing that.
You don't look a day over 55.
Okay.
I don't know what your age. But all to say, it's a great plug-in. I'm going to use that to just address that tomorrow. Artur Pawlowski, Jason Lavigne, myself will be hosting I called it Feed the Homeless. So I didn't know how to call it, but that's the name of the fundraiser that we're going to be running tomorrow it's 4 and 8 Mountain Time, 6 to 10 Eastern Time. Just a little plug. Jason, WireTap Media, please tell us who you are, what you do.
Well, I don't know how I follow up those two, but yeah, I'm just a web sleuth. I run the WireTap Media account, and an online degenerate. And I'll leave it at that.
And none other than the Jack Santa Claus. You do look like a really jacked up Santa Claus. Jeff Evely, what's going on, brother?
I think it's more like Beefcake Santa, but yeah, I'm Jeff Evely, 20-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, Iraq, Afghanistan, the Convoy, Rolling Thunder, James Top, the 1 Million March for Children, the 2025 election, and most recently, I took a walk in the woods.
Yeah, happy to see that you're back, that you got out the woods. On that note, guys, let's jump right into it. This is a topic I talk about all the time. I love to talk about this because most people don't have the balls to do it. So here we are. We have 6 people that have the courage to address a real problem that we're having in Canada. And let's start by the question Mark Carney, the question based on Mark Carney's comment: are Muslim values Canadian values? And whoever wants to take the first one, I will throw it to you. Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll jump in quickly and introduce myself because I got missed on that last round. I'm Jason Lavigne, the co-host.
I said Jason. There's only one Jason. Sorry, bro. My apologies.
Oh boy, there's only one Jason. I feel very flattered there, Nico. But yeah, Jason Lavigne, host of Lavigne Show. Albertan, definitely Alberta first type of guy, looking at helping Alberta take some big, bold steps forward and making sure that no matter what kind of conversations we have, they're true, honest, and in your face. And this is absolutely going to show exactly what we're talking about here with Nico. And we lost one already, so we'll get that one back. Jason number 2, he dropped. We'll get him back. But actually, let's throw this one to Jeff. Jeff, you want to go ahead and tackle this one? Are Muslim values Canadian values?
Well, short answer, no, but longer answer is it's complex, like everything else, of course. But no, as when we say Muslim, we mean people. But it gets complex when we start delving into the weeds about who's who and stuff like this. But in terms of a doctrine, Islam is at odds with other religions by its very nature. The Quran essentially reads like a roadmap to global tyranny, with pretty clearly stated goals of bringing the world under Sharia or Sharia law, as most people say, but and has openly hostile passages towards unbelievers. Like Surah 9 verse 5 says, "Fight and kill the unbelievers wherever you meet them." Depending on the translation, it might say unbelievers or infidels or idolaters. But I'm not the first to say it, that Islam has bloody borders all over the world. The biggest lie, I think, of the entire war on terror was Islam is a religion of peace. It is actually a religion of conquest. And that is not to say that every single Muslim, everybody who identifies as a Muslim, is necessarily has like violent intentions or even desires to have the rest of us live in dignitude, which is a second-class citizen that follows another religion and pays an extra tax to do so, and is subject to all kinds of different social abuse, also under the caliphate. It gets to be very problematic, I think, when we're dealing with Muslim immigration, especially mass immigration. It's just a numbers game. Certainly, we do have allies. I worked with Muslims while I was in Afghanistan. They were our translators. And again, when I was in Iraq, they were our translators as well. And quite frankly, I stayed up later and longer with those guys than I did with my fellow Canadians. We had some pretty interesting conversations, especially one guy in particular who survived 6 assassination attempts under the Ba'athist regime. Hell of a man. And, I was a spokesperson for Hands Off Our Kids for the 1 Million March for Children. So, that's a predominantly Muslim organization. And I think that is the path forward, is essentially, like, it's going to be messy work, but we have to identify allies. We need allies in the Muslim world because of the Muslim faith, because the just a plain language reading of the Quran, the Hadiths, the reliance on the fellow traveler, would drive an adherent to violence, definitely violence, conquest, and the like. But there are plenty of nominal Muslims who, kind of do the selective, the selective editing, like a lot of Christians do too, frankly, with deciding on which texts really apply in the here and now. A lot of these texts maybe they were applicable for a certain time and space, but not so much now. Now, mind you, it's harder to do that. It's harder to do that kind of rationalization with the Quran, because the commandments, like the one I just cited, Surah 9 verse 5, are open commandments. They're not confined to a particular time and space, like when God told Joshua to slay everybody in Jericho. That was confined to a particular battle, but an open commandment like slay all the unbelievers is not. So that is essentially the crux of the issue when it comes to Islam compared to other faiths, is that it is a religion of conquest and that it has aspirations of global dominance, and it contains open commandments for adherents to take up arms against unbelievers.
Okay, well, that's a great introduction for sure. And Jason, I'm going to actually pull up a video that you posted when you were promoting this actual show to kind of set the tone here. This is apparently somebody taking a pee all over some pork in a grocery store here in Canada.
Bro, je bent een radicaal. alleen omdat hij geen varken wilt eten? Wow. We don't eat pork. We don't eat pork.
So when it comes to or Canadian values there, Jason, what are your thoughts? Are they the same, Muslim values and Canadian values?
No, obviously not. But I also look at it from the political standpoint is they don't want to be ruled by our political ideology. They want Islam to be their political ideology. And if you talk to a lot of them, they would rather go under that system. That's why they try to implement their Sharia courts in the Western world, right? Their civil courts. It always starts with the civil, and then it moves on to the legal or the Sharia, the actual laws that they imply. So if you look in England, they already have like domestic courts to handle domestic situations so that they can handle things in their own communities. This negates our legal process. If you look at our legal process, it's solely built off of Christian values, and that's why they don't want to work underneath those processes. And so that's my position. I don't think that they could ever integrate. I think that when they pray in the streets, it's an act of dominance over our country. And they're flexing that, and we're allowing it to happen.
All right, so that's two for they're trying to dominate. They're not very compatible, and they certainly don't hold the same values. Pastor Artur Pawlowski, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Canadian values. So we are talking about the values of Carney, Trudeau, and the globalists, or the Canadian values that I emigrated to, because we're dealing with two types of regimes, if you will. We're talking about totalitarianism. We're talking about invasion. As you can tell, I am an immigrant. And when we received documents, when we were still in Greece, Canadian government asked us certain questions, and they invited us to embassy. It took us 5 years to fill documents, go through the medical, get the funds, because we were self-funded, and go to the, do criminal checks. And I remember the conversation we had in Canadian embassy in Athens, and we were told to come to Canada because Canada was the freest country on earth, and in Canada no one will ever persecute you for your faith. So we sold everything. We had very successful businesses, and we emigrated after 5 years of going through roadblocks and paperwork and this and that. We emigrated to Canada. Right now we are dealing with invasion. We are not dealing with emigration. So first of all, we have to establish that. And so what are the Canadian values that I emigrated to? I came here to Canada because Canada was offering me freedom. I came here because I was sick and tired of corruption. I was sick and tired of bribing politicians and police officers and being constantly threatened by this or by that. We escaped Poland because Poland was a totalitarian regime behind the Iron Curtain. And of course, there was lawlessness, was corruption, was bribery. So we came to Canada because Canada was a democratic country and had, and I want to emphasize on this word, had a rule of law, right? Well, that's all gone right now because there is an agenda. This is a controlled demolition. So Canadian values that build this country, let's establish that. So Canadian values that build this great, unbelievable, amazing, beautiful country. Well, let's compare them to the values of Islam. Islam, of course, it's a political system. It's not a religion. It's a submission. You must submit, and wherever you go, you have to submit others to your political ideology. Well, in Islam justifies plundering, enslaving, raping infidels. In Islam, pedophilia is a norm. You have to understand how the political system was established. It was established by a person that his name is Muhammad. Muhammad raped a girl, a child. He married Aisha when she was 6 years old, and he, consumed the marriage, if you will, when she was 9. So that's why they are fighting, as much as they can to legalize pedophilia, because that's normal in those countries. I want to ask you this. Do you know of any country that is ruled by Sharia law, by their political system, that is free? Any? Just give me one little tiny country that actually allows freedom of expression, freedom of religion, or freedom for women. I mean, I am in shock many times. Where are the women fighting for the rights? Because under Sharia law, women are properties. That's why you see those people walking around, women dressed like ninjas left and right, covered, because there is no freedom. That's it, zero. There is no freedom within that system. So if Canadian values are pedophilia, then yeah, Islam fits perfectly. If Canadian values today are enslavement of humanity, then yeah, Islam fits perfectly into that system. If we're talking about submission, if we're talking about two categories of people, because that's exactly what the Canadian government is implementing as we speak right now. They're creating two categories of people: the elites, the globalists, whatever you want to call them, the Sharia law people, and then the rest of us, right? So, of course, the answer for anyone that has a brain and understands what we're talking about, there's no mixing of those two things together, because you cannot mix tyranny with freedom. I mean, you can't do that. It will never happen. You cannot mix, human rights with a totalitarian regime that has zero human rights. And if you don't believe me, I will encourage you to go to England. I would encourage you to go to Ireland, go to France, Paris, go to Germany. Or if you want a little bit more extreme weather, if you will, go to Saudi Arabia, go to the places that are completely taken over by Sharia law, and try to establish a Christian church there. This is the shocking thing that I observe in the West. Those invaders are coming to our country, and they are demanding freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom of this and freedom of that. And yet, in the very countries that they escaped, and now they're turning our countries into hell that they escaped from, you cannot do that. How many churches are being established in under the Sharia law system, political system? Zero, none. You're not allowed to do it. Human rights, of course, you got the homosexuals marching with, by design, let me add this, with the Muslims yelling from the river to the sea during the past 2 years. And yet, under the Sharia law, under Islam, those people are being thrown off the roofs. That's Islam. And it comes, I just want to read one scripture here, because it comes from the very beginning of how the story started. And you can find this in Genesis 16:12. Genesis 16:12. And of course, that's a story of Ishmael. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. And that's what we're observing. I remember once I was doing a rally, a church service at City Hall, and the Muslims came, and I said, why do you hate your brother so much? And they all stopped, like in shock, because that's what it is. This is a civil war. This is a war between two brothers. Why do you hate your brother so much? Just because he's different than you? We all are different. Because he believes different than you. We all, to a point, believe a little bit differently about certain things. This is a civil war between the two brothers that spilled all over the world. Because under Sharia law, under Islam, there cannot be peace. Under Sharia law, you can lie. It's called taqiyya. You can conceal your faith. You can manipulate. You can do all kinds of different things. And when you have a system like this, and you want to implement that kind of a system into democracy or into a republic, you're going to have a civil war. I remember when the Muslims came to me about 10 years ago when we were in front of City Hall. They came and they said, another 20 years and we will take over. You will become our slaves. So they have agenda. The young people, if you talk to them, if they're honest, you have to understand that their political system, they have an agenda. And their agenda is very clear: to take over, to conquer. That's their agenda. So, of course, it's impossible. There is no way you can mix those ideologies together, democracy and Islam. It's impossible. You cannot do it. It will never work. It cannot work. The moment they reach about 7%, 10%, some say 50% within the population, they're going to take over political realm. They're going to take over the streets. They're going to take over, everything. And that's exactly what we are observing right now.
Okay, Nadine, if you have your video, you can jump back on because I certainly want to go to you next here. But here's something that we saw come out of Ottawa. And by the way, thank you, Pastor Art, for identifying which Canadian values are we talking about. What we all wish we had or what we currently have. It's a good way to look at this as well. But this is in Ottawa now. It's Sabad Modest Wear. So now there are stores that are being set up for modest wear. So you can tell that this is making its way here all over Canada. So I'm not sure what happened to Nadine, but she may have just stepped away for a second. Nico, then let's go to you with this question, because I'm still a student of this subject. I'm learning a lot about it because I've been, in my own little world for the longest time. But you cover the subject a lot, Nico. What are your thoughts?
Well, I got to say, I love the way, I really like the way Jeff approached it, because he approached it from... I want to say like a common sense perspective, like because he's not a Christian, right? This is what's very different between the way I see things and the way Jeff Evely sees things, is he's not a Christian. Same thing for Pastor Pawlowski. He's a Christian and he sees it from that perspective as well. But let's be all honest, and I think we can all agree with this, and I'm going to use Jeff's word. Islam is a religion of conquest. I would go further to say that it's a religion of war, because Christianity spread through accepting that our God and Savior died for everybody's sin, for shedding his blood. Islam spread by shedding others' blood. So you see that we are not the same. And you can argue with me until you're blue in the face, but Canada was founded on Christian values. Our system of law is Christian. And one of the conversations that I've had with Jeff Evely, and I think it was on camera, he said himself that he would rather live under a Christian-based society than any other society, because we're extremely acceptant when it comes to other people's wants. Even we don't agree with it, that doesn't mean that we're going to hate them. On the contrary, we're taught to love them. This is where the first step, this is what we need to accept. Now, what's very interesting is that if you look at what's happening all over the West, especially in the UK, France, they changed their ways. They are taking over country through mass immigration. Once they're in the country, they align with the woke under the guise of inclusion, and then they slowly take over the country with what they call vote over the bullet. So they vote themselves into positions of power. Just look at the UK. How many mayors of major cities are Muslims now?
Yeah.
So they are slowly taking over. They don't need to be violent anymore. They take over. They're very intelligent. Like, let's be honest here. We cannot underestimate how intelligent those people are, because they are taking advantage of the woke. They're taking advantage of our accepting nature. But the point in the matter is that you look at Canada right now, we have a two-tier justice system. Muslims are able to block whatever street they want. They block the streets here in Montreal, some of the busiest street that we have in Montreal. They take over Park under police protection. Look at what they're doing. Yonge and Bloor in Toronto, arguably the busiest street that we have in Canada. They can stop traffic whenever they want, no problem. Nobody's going to do anything. The police is going to protect them. But then you have guys like Pastor Derek Reimer. that gets arrested for being on a sidewalk or complaining that a public funded library is showing dudes in skirts to children, the drag queen story hours, and him complaining about that is hateful. But they can take over parks, they take over streets, and we're supposed to accept this. So we do have a two-tier justice system. But the problem is that we're here. They're here already. We have already a massive amount of them that are in Canada. You see what's happening all over the West. The issue becomes, how do we deal with them? Because now you look at the way Quebec is trying to handle it, where I'm from right now. They're trying to pass laws to prevent people from displaying their religion. They don't want people in the street to pray. I get it. I understand. You don't see any Christians out there blocking the street to pray. And if they did, as a Christian, I would be the first one to call them out to say, guys, what the fuck are you doing? This is not right. This is against the law. We have plenty of places that we can pray. Why is it so different with them? Why is it so different? Why are we accepting show of force? Because I agree with Jason from WireTap. This is a show of force. This is not... They're not being religious. They're telling us that here's what we do, and there's nothing that you can do to stop us. Why else would they pray in front of the Notre Dame Basilique right here in Montreal? Arguably the nicest church in Canada. They pray right on the sidewalk next to the church on Sundays. This is all because they want to. They're showing that we won't stop them. That's what it is. But how do we deal with them? Because that's where we're here right now. I think we can all agree that there's a problem. But the question I have for you guys is, how do we deal with them? Because they're here. It's a problem we need to address. No matter what, they're here. There's not going to be a remigration, I think people like to call it, where we're just going to take them out and take them and send them back where they came from. So the problem is already here. We can look at what's going on in the West, in the UK, in France. What do we do? Because that's a question. I don't have a solution, but I'd like you guys to tell me, what do you think the next step is? What do we do under the understanding that they're very intelligent? They have a line with the woke. The woke is protecting them. But as Artur Pawlowski mentioned, when they reach that 10%, because the numbers I always see is that between 10 to 20%, they take over. Because they're very smart in the way they approach it. They take over political positions like mayors of cities. And we saw, I can't remember what the place is. I think it was in Michigan in the US. They aligned with the LGBTQ community. They got elected. On the Thursday they got elected as a mayor, they banned the LGBTQ flag. This is what they do. It sounds comical, but this is the situation that we're dealing with. So what do we do?
Okay, so we'll come to the what we do right after Nadine, because I did want to go to Nadine.
Oh, she's back.
Yeah, she's back. And part of the conversation was oppression towards females. Yep. And I think, Nadine, what Nico was saying there is they're not here to assimilate, they're here to dominate. And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's an interesting problem because Canadians are so politically correct. You point out accurately that nobody wants to have the conversation as to what's truly going on. So I'm not here so much because I'm an expert in the area or the question, as is, just somebody who's willing to have the conversation to explore the depth of the problem. But the reality is, no, the Muslim religion, or I would call it more political ideology more than anything else, especially extreme Islam, does not and is not the same as Canadian values. And Arthur is not wrong in the fact that Canada has changed. Prior to 1982 and the signing of the Constitution, we were very much, governed by more Christian values that, you would have wanted to come here to be a part of. Since 1982, we have adopted multiculturalism. Now, I will use Lebanon as a perfect example of what can happen when extreme Islam, becomes the predominant philosophy, ideology, religion in a country, because there's many, many stories of just how free Lebanon was. It was one of the most free countries in the world, very well educated, had an amazing economy, a very stable financial banking system. It was often referred to as the Paris of Middle East. And so when it achieved its independence in the 40s from France, it was 70% Christian. And of course, they were very tolerant, right? Because that's what Christians are, very tolerant and very accepting and welcoming. And what happened was, little by little, they opened their doors and allowed more and more people. And as the Muslims took over, in essence, what happened, they pushed everything else, and they integrated into society from a standpoint of perception until they became the majority. At which point, then they literally started persecuting Christians. So, it's if that's a story to kind of look upon as a warning to what's possible, I think then this is a topic that needs to be taken very seriously, and people need to understand that, has the Muslim faith changed? From what I can see, no, it hasn't, from its doctrine. Now, again, to Jeff's point, though, not all Muslims are the same, right? So it was, I think it was, gentlemen who maybe I quote this wrongly, but not every Muslim is a terrorist, but most terrorists are Muslims. So, when we look at what's going on in Sweden and Denmark and around Europe, in the UK, you have people that are being murdered, people that are being raped, and women do need to take note of what's going on, because, I don't particularly care to be somebody else's property. I don't particularly care to be a ninja, although, it might help conceal some of my superpowers, my women's superpowers. But the reality is this is a conversation that needs to be had, and one that seems to be so reluctantly pursued by so many people. And politics uses the whole opportunity to divide. And that's the problem I have with politics today, is it's used as this divide and conquer. And it's the useful idiot, as what they called it in communism, right? So let's divide the population. Let's pit person against person, race against race, religion against religion. And the thing with any country, any nation, for it to survive, you have to have shared values. You cannot disagree with the fundamental, foundation of what your nation believes in. And this is what we've done. So, I know Nico wants to get into how do we solve this, but I'm going to say this, and then I'll hand it back. The foreign minister of the UAE, the United Immigrants, he warned about extreme Islam. And he said that, the Eastern world, or the Western world, is going to have a real problem with this. And when he was asked why, it was because of our lack of decision-making on how to deal with it and our political correctness. So let that be a warning.
And I'll answer the question too, Nico, and then we'll jump into try and find some solutions for this. But my wife is Lebanese, that's her blood, and she grew up in Nigeria, and they had to leave because of what's happening there with Boko Haram, who is an Islamic radical group who's taken up the Northwest and actually taking over Christian schools and stealing girls and murdering a whole bunch of people. This is happening now, like today.
Yep.
And this doesn't even make the headlines, right? They're being persecuted there right now. And a lot of people had to leave that country, my wife and her family included, because they were quite literally going to be murdered if they stayed there, because they're not Islamic and not Muslim. So we have this in Lebanon. Nigeria is a current example as it's happening right now, and this has happened all over the place. And it concerns me, because why isn't this mainstream media? Why are they not trying to help the people in Nigeria or these other countries where they're actually going to the schools, taking all the school girls and taking them as wives and removing them? And this is happening as we speak here today. And we're more worried about what happens in the US and Canada, but why don't we care about this as well? So now we're going to move over to the solution portion of this. Jeff, I want to bring you back, because Nico kind of mentioned that you're not a religious person, you're not a Christian, but you would prefer to live with a Christian-based society. Is that still the case? And what is your thought about Islam, taking over other countries and persecuting and murdering people as well?
Well, yeah, what I usually say is that I couldn't be an atheist in anything but a Christian country. Yeah, I couldn't.
That's it.
I couldn't be an atheist in a Muslim country. Yeah, so obviously, I don't feel good about Boko Haram and what they're doing. I believe I'm a declared target of them as well for my participation in the campaign to liberate Afghanistan and the campaign to destroy the so-called Islamic State. So, I'm on all the lists. So I don't want those guys coming here. And like I was saying, like this is a really tough problem to manage, more so when it comes to the Islamic world than with other faiths. And there's a breakdown we can do by region as well, but we might be a little too far in the weeds there. But I mean, we're talking about bringing 5,000 Palestinian so-called refugees, to Canada. Palestine is not a place; it's a terrorist movement, and it was the terrorist movement that destabilized Lebanon, with some help from Syria, of course. But but yeah, I mean, and the other thing I wanted to kind of ring the alarm on here is we're throwing numbers out there about population density of Muslim and destabilization of states. And do you know what the Muslim population of Britain is right now? 6%. So yeah, it's not really that high. Like they start getting active when they're about 2 to 4%, and they start getting really aggressive anywhere beyond that. And we're starting to see that already. We're at 4.9%, and the terrorism is what comes next, because they're already preying in the streets. And that's not to say that we haven't had terror attacks either. For example, like the Danforth shooter, that was portrayed in the media as somebody who was distraught because Canadians are so racist, he went out and just kind of went on a shooting rampage, on a whim, but his shooting was actually quite proficient. He took up a stance. He was quite cool and collected as he shot, and he in the house where he lived with his brother had gone into a coma because he came into contact with the carfentanil that they were hiding, which is perhaps good as a drug, but more useful as an explosive. And the RCMP wouldn't give even a gram of the stuff to the American authorities, who wanted to check to see if it was the nexus between Chinese triads and Pakistani Islamists, because that's a thing too, is the commies ally with the Islamists. And what we're living under now is something more like Islamism through this kind of Hegelian synthesis of the Islamists and the communists here in Canada, the woke, and the Chinese. They had an upgrade to the art of war in the 90s. It's called Unrestricted Warfare. It's available on Amazon, and it's the quote that I take from it is the battle space is everywhere. So every point of contact with them is one that they will use to exploit to weaken us from within, whether it's economic or cyber or cultural, or weaponized migration. That's my term, but that's essentially what they're describing in the book. And they co-opt supranational organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, the EU, and in their own words, the biggest of them all, the UN. And what's the UN putting out there? But replacement migration doctrine. They support that kind of thing. And we do have a need for that. It's to support the OAS and the CPP, because they're going to go bankrupt without the population increase that they're absolutely dependent upon. So they're exploiting these vulnerabilities. And as you can see, like, it is weaponized migration. It's not like we're bringing strictly engineers and architects and doctors over here. That is not the case at all. It's the kind of migration that weakens us from within and destabilizes us from within. And in terms of like, how do we solve it? Well, I say step one, cut them off. Would like just stop paying people to sit around in hotels all day plotting terrorist attacks. It's unbelievable, like the kind of benefits that these guys are coming here for, a lot of these people. And all we have to do is just turn off the money fire hose, and they'll move on to another sucker, or they'll go home. The other thing that I think we need is well, obviously immigration reform, but citizenship reform as well. Like PR, a permanent resident, that needs to mean something. That means that you are a pledge. You come here as a permanent resident, never expecting to achieve citizenship. But if you have kids here who are born and raised amongst a peer group of Canadians, then they will be citizens and they'll get to vote. It's just a vulnerability that we need to shore up. Because it's being exploited, obviously, is citizenship and birthright citizenship as well. That has to go, because a lot of PRs are coming here and they don't even stay. They stay for like 3 years, have a kid, and then they go back to China or India. But that child is a Canadian citizen. And so they can use them as an anchor baby, even though they haven't been living in Canada. And we end up with this kind of chain migration. I think I saw an article there once where the first Palestinian we brought 43 relatives. If they're bringing 5,000, that's like 200,000 people. Like it's game over if we go that route. So so these are vulnerabilities that clearly our adversaries are exploiting in our system. Birthright citizenship, like it's just us in the United States who actually do it, it should be like it should mean something to be a Canadian citizen. Not just our social benefits and welfare programs.
Okay, that's an awesome way of putting it, because weaponization of migration, I like that term, and that's exactly what we've been seeing here. And Jason, I'm coming to you next. The UN also doing replacement migration. And some of the obvious answers here, Jason, would be you need to have national pride, so a little bit more nationalism, and fight for it. You may have to try and remove them. So immigration, I'm sure you can help us with that one, would be a couple of the obvious things that would need to happen. And but the media fights against it. So as media, you've been exposing the media that's fighting against it, also exposing the necessity of it. Want to jump into some of that?
Yeah. So I think Jeff nailed it, that this is a very difficult thing to combat. But what we have to do is remove their shield. Their shields are these NGOs and second level organizations that are arm's length from the government, but being funded by the government. So like Barbara Perry's organization, Hate, Bias, and Extremism, like this is one organization. She's been misrepresenting Islamic extremism since 2012. She's been trying to sell this picture that white supremacy is more, there's higher rates of acts of terrorism in Canada by white supremacists than there are in Muslim culture. But the problem is like we have security features and high security against this stuff. And some of the newer stuff that came out when you heard CSIS give that presentation, what he didn't tell people is who he was talking about wasn't white nationalism or white extremists, or he was talking about Muslims. 1 in 10 terrorist plot is being done by somebody under the age of 18. And a lot of these individuals are being radicalized into Muslim extremism. And the problem is when we have these NGOs that are putting up a shield and protecting, these individuals and not sharing the full truth. Like, here's an example of something Barbara Perry said. She said that Islamic extremism attacks don't generally come in the form of bombings. She said that on TVO. She said that's categorically false. And it's just like, well, no, like we see it all over news. We see it happening in the Middle East. These people sacrifice themselves. They'll take out 100 people, to kill themselves. And it's just that sort of rhetoric. So I think like where we start is we start to go after these smaller organizations, even the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. They really defend the Muslim community. And we go after even you know, I hate to say it, but even the Muslims have their own organization now that puts up these barriers and shields and protects their communities. And that's who I think we should go after.
Okay, and now, Pastor Art, when we come to you, we're going to be talking about the political side of things. You escaped a system that passed its Rubicon. It went beyond repair. Here you are in Canada watching the system as well. And when he talks about, you know, Barbara Perry, she's an advisor to the Parliament on things like the hate speech laws. And the government itself is going against us on this one. So, yeah, you want to talk to us a bit about how the political system is also involved in this, and what do we do to try and fix it or reverse it, or is it past the point of no return?
No, there's always a solution, and there is always hope. It's up to us, the people. I mean, like I have been saying in the past 5 years, give me enough Canadians and I will give you back your liberties. Give me enough Albertans and I will bring you back the prosperity. I mean, we have the resources and we have the power. There's more of us than of them. Is the problem that I'm seeing right now is that the majority of the people are absolutely uninterested to engage in the political realm. And our election in Alberta is a perfect example. I have been warning about what is about to happen. I have been telling people what is coming. You will replace the head, but the body is corrupted to the core, is rotten to the core, and it's not going to change. You're not going to change anything by replacing a leader, by leaving everything intact. It's not doing anything, but people have chosen. They have picked their savior. And here we are. Albertans are in a worse economical shape within the Confederation. We have the biggest defaulting on credit cards. Albertans are going to start next year losing tens of thousands of homes. I mean, it's an economical disaster. And yet at the same time, we have more oil than Saudi Arabia. If someone like me was in a leadership position of this province, Alberta would be the most prosperous province within the Confederation. However, what we're dealing with is treason. And I want you to understand what I'm trying to say. We are witnessing treason from our politicians. If I was your king, those people would be charged for treason. That's what we're observing right now. They have sold Canada, they have sold Canadians to the Chinese and to the Muslims. And you're absolutely right if it comes to divide and conquer, Nadine, because they are always using the same modus operandi. They are pitching people against each other while they are doing whatever they want. And that's exactly what I am observing is happening in Alberta. That's exactly what is happening in Canada. I grew up under the boots of a totalitarian regime behind the Iron Curtain, and it was going on for decades until one day, people decided we have nothing else to lose, shoot us dead, but we want a change. I think, Jason, Canadians are not there yet. And I don't want to be pessimistic. I don't want to be the one that is telling you we have to hurt a little bit more until people will realize that we have to do something about it. When I'm traveling around and I'm seeing Albertans, I see people going back to their merry lives, riding the fence, and focusing only on a paycheck. In a big part. I mean, I'm not talking about, the remnant, if you will. I'm talking about the big part of the population in Canada. People are absolutely uninterested. Every cycle, every election, Jason, is I want to take the path of the least resistance. So my grandfather was voting conservative. My father was voting conservative. I will vote conservatives. But the conservatives are the traitors. Liberals, conservatives, NDP, they're all the same, leading us into the same slaughterhouse. So how the Polish people did it, and I think that's why they hate me so much, because not only I grew up in hell, but I also saw the remedy, or paradise, if you will, whatever you want to call it. The Solidarity movement was brilliant because people did not use guns. They didn't take it to the streets, killing police officers, killing politicians, and doing, all kinds of horrible things. No, they understood the simple concept. There is more of us than the villains. And they paralyzed their entire system by using something that is called general strike. And that's what I was telling people in my sermon in Quds and through the rallies for the past few years. I was simply telling people, listen, if we have enough numbers, if you're going to give us enough numbers of like-minded Canadians that want their liberty back, their totalitarian system collapses. Sharia law, Islam, only survives on the notion of a totalitarianism. So they are ruling only because the rest of the people, the majority of the people, are allowing them to rule. If enough Canadians would rise up, stand up, and say, listen, politicians, we're going to replace you, and we're going to take the power, we're going to stop this invasion on our values, on our countries, against our children, it's over. Because politicians, in most part, are cowards. They are just rats and cowards. They just want to be re-elected, and they don't care about anything else. They are afraid of the numbers. That's why they brought the injunction, Jason, as you remember, under this rotten, corrupted mayor, Jody Condek, when they went to the court, and the corrupted judge gave them the injunction to stop protests because they were afraid of the numbers. We had 15 to 20,000 people every single week. Look at what happened in Ottawa with the truck convoy. Why they targeted peaceful Canadians? Because the numbers were growing. You have to understand, it's not that whatever we were doing was so dangerous. It was not the trucks. It was not the rallies. It was the numbers. We were getting the numbers, and that scared them because they know history. Some people may say, you're demonizing Islam. Islam is not that bad. I have a friend. My neighbors are Muslims. And I'm telling you, I went to Israel. I spent 3 weeks in Israel in a semi-political trip. And I spent a few days in the West Bank. And I had amazing time with the Muslims. Amazing times. I was dining in the restaurants. I was touring with them. I was seeing things that tourists are not allowed to see. I had a great time because people are the same all over the world. People. But we're not talking about just people. We're talking about political entities. We're talking about political ideology. So I want to read a little bit, just few verses from their ideology, because people have to understand what we're dealing with whom you're talking to, what those people are standing for. Because Canadians, in my opinion, as a Polish immigrant, of course, as you know, I speak differently. I'm wired differently. When you grow up in hell, you're more vocal. You're more, you will raise your voice. You will, shout names. You're going to do something because you know what's coming. I think majority of Canadians have no clue. They have no idea what's coming, what's already here, how dangerous this is, what the politicians are doing to us. Because do not kid yourself. This is being done to us by design. Politicians are doing this to us by design. So let me read just few verses from Quran. Quran 291, slay the unbelievers wherever you find them. Quran 533, maim and crucify the infidels if they criticize Islam. So there goes your freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Quran 865, unbelievers are stupid. Muslims are urged to fight them. Quran 923, make war on the infidels living in your neighborhood. Was not that you said that the whole ideology is war? That's exactly what it is. Islam is war, is conquest. It's a political powerhouse. Quran 328, Muslims must not take infidels as friends. So even if you're dealing with a real a Muslim that believes in Quran, he is lying to you. He's using taqiyya, which under their system, they can lie to you. They can, con you, if you will. Muslims must not take the infidels as friends. Quran 8:12, terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than Quran. I mean, you're going to lose your head sooner or later. If they get the power, there goes your head. Quran 9:5, when the opportunity arises, kill the infidels wherever you find them. Quran 22:19, punish the unbelievers with garments of fire, hooked iron rods, boiling water, melt their skin and bellies. Quran 385. Any religion other than Islam is not acceptable. I mean, it's so simple. It's so in your face. They're not hiding it. That's their law. That's what they believe. That's their system. That's their politics. Quran 8:60. Muslims must master all weapons to terrorize the infidels. You see the difference between the Christians and the Christianity and Islam is very simple. We learn how to use a weapon to defend ourselves, to defend our wives, our husbands, our children, right? That's what we do. That's what we do. When we go to school, we learn how to forward the society, how to, benefit the society, how to enrich the society. When we go to war to defend, not to attack, not to take over, not to destroy. Whatever we do as Christians, we build. The Bible is very clear. We are to even pray for our enemies. Just few more. Quran 9:30. The Jews and Christians are perverts. Fight them. Quran 47:4. Do not seek peace. Do not seek peace with the infidels. Infidel, by the way, for those that do not know, is the unbeliever, the one that does not believe in Muhammad, does not believe in Quran. Do not seek peace with the infidels. Behead them when you catch them. So, are those Canadian values? I mean, seriously, those people that are listening and are thinking we are over the top and we are kind of making stuff up. Well, I just read to you their book. In my book, in the Bible, there were seasons that God was commanding to do all kinds of different things. But when Jesus died on the cross, you have to understand, when he died on the cross, he says, Father, forgive them because they do not know what they do. Pray for your enemies. Pray for them. Do good to those that, hate you and attack you. So it's completely different system. And I think we took this to the extreme in the West, and we have become so nice that we have even become nice to the devil. In other words, I say to the people, your system right now in your brain when you were growing up in Canada is, if someone was to rape your wife, you would ask them if they need a condom to support whatever they're doing. Would you like a coffee? You're raping my daughter. Sir, would you like a coffee? Would you like a tea? Can I fix you a supper while you are at it? And that's exactly what the chief of police said just a few months ago. Remember? I hope Canadians remember what they said. They said, if you're attacked, if you have an invader, if someone breaks into your house, comply. No, no, I will never comply. Listen, I would use a chair if needs be, but you're gone if you come into my property. If you enter my house with the intent, if you want to hurt my family, you're finished. You're done. So help me God. Right? Because we have been attacked. Canadians are under attack, but they are not realizing. And we have to understand that we're not looking for a fight. We're not looking for a violence. But we have to relearn in the West how to defend, how to be a man. You know what my wife said to the reporter? I was shocked. She not very often gives interviews, but we had this big outlet and he really wanted to get an interview from my wife. And I was expecting something spiritual, I was expecting something different. He asked her a question. What do you think is the number one needed thing in the West right now in the 21st century? You know what she said? She said, well, the most important thing, in my opinion, is for men to be men. We have no men. Where are the men? I, as a pastor, I deal with young girls that come and they say, Pastor, I can't find a man. That's a tragedy. Young girls look around and what do they see? You don't want me to say on a live screen what we see right now. And for women to be women, it was a beautiful thing once where ladies were acting like ladies, and we opened the doors for them, and we treated them with respect, and we helped them, And they were the mothers, they were the grandmas, they were the wives, they were the daughters, the beauty of a woman. Now most women are acting like men, and men are acting like pussycats, like women. It's disgusting. Young girls right now in Canada look around and they cannot find a man as a potential husband. That tells you everything. So we men, we first of all are the older men. We must teach the younger men how to be a man. It's okay sometimes to, hey, I'm not going to allow you to do this. Don't stop or else. It's okay to be a man. And for the ladies, of course, to be ladies. So everything is upside down, and they are using our enemies of what's good, enemies of Christianity, enemies of the Republic, enemies of democracy, are using this weakness against us, and they're destroying us. Right now, men are more likely smoke a dope than speak about this topic and voice their opinion. They have been dominated completely by this garbage of political correctness. They're scared, and the only thing they think about is, no offense, stupid hockey or soccer and the six-pack, watching movie or watching whatever every single day. So we failed as a society, and the Islam and the homosexuals and the transgender, all those woke crazy people are as like a punishment on our society. I think God is shaking us and he's saying, hey, come on, guys, come back to the original plan. Come back to the foundation of what made North America powerful and great. So the solution is very simple, in my opinion: replace the politicians. That's the number one thing. If we had the right leadership, and I'm not just talking about the political realm, I'm not talking about just the parties, replace the leadership in the church. Where are the pastors preaching? Where are the church leaders educating people about what is happening right now? They're nowhere to be found, except few exceptions. So leadership, replace the leadership, and the right leadership for the right season, for the right time, is going to bring sanity back into our country. If you're hoping that the wishy-washy, flip-flopping Pierre Poilievre is going to fight for you, you're completely brain dead and brainwashed. Those are weak men sold to whoever pays the biggest number of silver coins. You need strong, powerful, unapologetic people of faith that believe what they say and they do what they say, what they preach. That's the solution.
I know that. Yes, absolutely. Where are the men? And I know Jeff agrees with this. Weak men bring hard times, and this is kind of where we're at. And Nadine, I'm coming to you next, because some of the things that Pastor Artur was talking about was also the politicians. They're bought off. They're not doing the right things. They're kind of kowtowing or capitulating to Islam and other things. And I just want to bring something to your attention. I'm sure you're aware of, but bring it to the audience. Daniel Smith's Alberta government is facilitating halal mortgages through legislative changes, specifically Bill 32 in late 2024, to allow financial institutions like credit unions and ATB to offer interest-free financing compliant with Islamic law, Sharia law, addressing a key need for Muslim homebuyers to avoid traditional interest-based loans. The government's goal, supported by efforts since 2023, is to create flexible regulations, potentially using a regulatory sandbox to bring diverse financial solutions to Alberta and protect consumers. And some of this is being led by Thomas Usakic, who actually just did the Forever Canadian petition, got 450,000 people to agree with him. And one of his businesses is halal mortgages here in Alberta. So what are your thoughts there when it comes to replacing all leaders? Where are the men? And remember, nice guys finish last.
Well, I don't disagree with where are the men. I think we are, have watched a generation of helicopter parents that have created a lot of weakness in society. And men, I think, have been very feminized and are very confused as to how to behave. I mean, we're trying to turn little boys into little girls in schoolrooms. We're trying to have men behave like women, and it doesn't work that way. And I'm thankful. I'm married to a shoot, shovel, and shut up kind of real Albertan man. And so, but it's really funny. It wasn't always that way. So this is my second marriage. We've been married now for 16 years. My first marriage, I tell people, he loved me. There was no doubt that there was love there. But this marriage, there's more than love. He adores me. And there's a difference. And I think, Pastor Art, you may actually pick up on this, like between just straight, yeah, I love her, but he used to let me do it because I could, right? My husband, Jason, he knows I can do, but he doesn't let me because he's the man. Right. And there's a role for him to play in all of that. And it's funny because so many women get offended because somebody helps open a door. My husband still opens the door for me every time I get in the truck. We went and got groceries today. We went and he's like, I'm your chauffeur today. And of course, every time I got out of the truck, he was there to open the door. Every time I got into the truck, he was there to open the door. There's a difference when you're with somebody like that. So there is a difference in, I think, how we've raised this generation. And I do believe that a lot of women are very confused because they are looking for a man in their life, and they're not hard. They're not easy to come by right now. But I mean, that's a completely separate conversation, which we can go into, but you asked the question. So that's just my own personal experience. But with respect to leadership, there's a tremendous lack of leadership in this country, not only in this country, but in many countries around the world. You see them all across the EU, right? We have little boys, we have weakness, we have people who are puppets being manipulated. They're being told what to do. There is corruption that's running rampant, and there is no leadership. Nobody has a vision. So it's been my experience with immigration, even people are either running towards something or they're running away from something. Right? So either you're running away from something you don't like, you dislike, that's harmful or hurtful to you, or you're running towards something that is just so great that you want to be a part of. And in Canada right now, you have people that are coming here, and it was Trudeau who said post-nation state, right? We have no Canadian identity. We don't know what it means to be Canadian anymore. That's the first thing that needs to be fixed, in my opinion. And that requires leadership, of which there is none. Every politician today runs on polls. They won't state something, say something until there's a sense of safety, because their jobs are the priority, not ruling over the nation and what's the best interest of the people. It is their position, their power. And you see this even in politics, to Pastor Art's point, whether it doesn't matter whether you're liberal, conservative, NDP, Green, it doesn't matter. They're all moving in the same direction with the same policies. Yeah. And the reality is, so for example, the Conservatives, they'll say, well, Stephen Harper said this in an interview one time when he was on a US news channel. He said, if the Liberals came out with a really good idea that was really the best thing to do for the country, would you support it? And his answer was flat out no. No, because he says, I'm the opposition. And his job was to get back into power. And I'm like, therein lies the problem with party systems, in my opinion. I don't believe we should have party systems. I think we should elect the best person in our riding to do the best job for us. Yeah. And we need to get away from the party system. We need to get away from career politics. So one of the things I write about in my book, Alberta Rising, is one rule of law that applies to everybody equally. No more two-tier justice system. I don't care whether you're Aboriginal. I don't care whether you're Muslim. I don't care whether you're blue, green, purple, black, yellow. It does not matter to me. The rule of law is blind justice. One rule of law applies to everybody the exact same way. And with respect to things like halal mortgages and stuff, that's not one rule of law that applies to everybody, especially when the government gets involved. It's one thing if the government is not involved and the private sector sees an opportunity to take advantage of a market space and it wants to, profit from that. Sure, there's a demand, let it, but there's one rule of law that applies to everybody equally. So, either if we're going to run towards something or run away from something, let's create a system here. And I talk about Alberta because you know what? We can't change Canada, unfortunately. We can only change our communities. We can only change our family. We can only change ourselves. And I've learned to focus on Alberta because I think that Alberta can change. It is a small enough ecosystem that we can make significant change here. Let's create a system here that works. Let's create a system here, a vision. Let's build a vision, right? That's the Christian value, to build a vision of a province, of a country called Alberta, that everybody here can be proud of, that is prosperous, that is free, that has an identity, that people understand what the values are. And there's one rule of law that applies to everybody equally.
We may have the new future president of Alberta on this panel right now. There's a couple of people here I would certainly vote for if they were in that position. Nico, a whole bunch of head nodding happening. You started looking like Christopher Freeland with your head nodding so much, especially around the whole where are the men part and how we fight back against this. So you heard some of the solutions. Pastor Art said, give me enough Canadians and I can fix this. And Nadine is saying it's time to kind of basically separate and start again here in Alberta. We had Jason who said you got to expose this and talk about it and don't ignore it. And then we also have Jeff who says it's going to be something that we got to work towards and there's ways to get it done. What are your thoughts, Nico?
What's the common denominator with all the comments that were made? Men need to be men again. Yeah. You can. This is what I started creating content about 4 or 5 years ago. I've been on some of the biggest platforms in the world debating. The last time I was in San Francisco debating a lesbian mother that was trying to tell me that her son did not need a man in her life. Surprisingly, she was also raised by lesbian mothers, but the thing she did not want to admit to is that her grandfather took over the role of being a father because she did not have a father. And that was the hardest death. His death was the hardest moment she's ever been through. So in a debate, I got her to admit that her grandfather played her father. And before she admitted that I was right, she changed the subject. So this is the truth. Even lesbian mothers understand how important men are to their lives. They might not want to admit to it, but even them know it. So we need to go back to a point where men are being men, because men are supposed to stand up for what is right. We are supposed to protect. We are supposed to be the ones that will get in the line of fire. That could be politically, that could be physically, that could be in war, that name it. Men are supposed to protect others. We're supposed to protect our women. Just what Nadine was talking about. Do you think... I saw videos online, and I swear I'm going to go back to the subject of the day. It's just this is one of my main topics that I speak about all the time. But I saw a video the other day where mothers were being asked if they would kill for their kids. And mothers are saying, oh, no, I could never do that. I could never do that. I could never do that.
Don't walk into my house, Nico.
My wife is looked. Sure. Yeah, my wife looked at me.
My daughter, and you're coming out the loser.
And that's how it should be. But the point is that my wife looked at me as in, oh, what the fuck are those women smoking? But the second thing that you saw in her eyes is, you better take a fucking bullet for for our kid and for me. And that is my role. I'm 6'1", 235. I have more than 20 years of martial art, guns, knives, name it, experience. Do you think that that's just because I wanted to learn how to maybe defend myself? No, it's because I will fuck anybody up that messes up with my family. This is my number one role as a husband and as a man, as a father, is to protect my loved ones. Plain and simple. No matter the consequences, those are my responsibilities. And imagine if our society in Canada was ruled by men that are ready to do what needs to get done. Not like Pierre Poilievre that leaves his balls in his wife's purse and asks permission from his party to actually speak about something, but people that actually lead by example. Because this is what I do for my son. I don't want to have to explain it to him. I want him to see what it is, what a man is, just by my actions. I will explain it to him, but he needs to see it first. And that's what we need in Canada. Imagine if we did have those men that were ready to take the hit, to do what's right, not because it's easy, but because it's hard to lead. Imagine how different Canada would be. So that's number one. But number two, I agree with Jeff 100%. We need to cut off the Muslims, the immigrants that are here leeching off our system, that are taking advantage of the fact that we have a social system here that people can take advantage of. They don't need to contribute in order to come here and to get access to all of our social services. So cut them off, send them packing. And as we said, I spent a lot of my youth, unfortunately, in bars, drinking and doing drugs. And there was a saying, it's time to go home. But you don't have to go home. You just can't stay here. This is how we need to see it. We need to send them packing. And I don't really care where they go from here. There's at least 56 countries, last time I checked, that will accept, that are Muslims, that are ran by the Muslim political system. So there's plenty of places for them to go, but it ain't here. And I would take it a step further, and that's going to transition into the next question, because Jason, you should have answered this question before you put me on camera again, because now I'm going to ask another question. But the point of the matter is that no matter how you look at it, Canadians cannot afford immigrants anymore. We can't afford to pay for people that don't contribute, that don't come here to participate and to make Canada better. The average Canadian spends 42.3% of their income to taxes, federal, provincial, or municipal. I calculated it. We have over 100 different taxes in Canada. 1 out of 4 Canadian is facing food insecurities right now. We cannot deal with a mass influx of people that are here to leech off the system and not participate. So I would say that the solution is not simple. Is simple, not easy, but simple. Close the border. Stop immigration as a whole. Put it on hold for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Let's reassess the people that we allowed in over the past 10 years. Have they participated? Or have they made Canada better? Yes or no? No. Send them packing. Again, I don't care where you go. You just can't fucking stay here.
Now, the numbers have already proven on immigration that it hasn't made Canadians' lives better. It's actually made them worse. Our standard of living has decreased. So the immigration situation is not a quantity game. It is a quality game. And unfortunately, our capita per GDP per capita is going down. Why? Because the costs of the immigrant that are coming in, especially when you just open the door to their families and to their, senior mom and dads, they're a burden now. And I don't mean to say it in that way, but it's the reality. You spend the bulk of our healthcare in the later stages of life, not when you're 20 and 30 years old, but when you're 80 years old. Like, the most money that you're going to spend are the last few months of your life. And we're opening up our borders to all these families that we can't afford. And so when, Jeff, you pointed out, CPP and OAS, they're going to fail because we're flooding, the country with immigrants, not because they're here that they're contributing, because we're bringing the wrong types of people in. I mean, at one time we used to screen and we did immigration based upon economic need. There was a requirement. So we brought in highly skilled individuals who were going to be highly, contributing to society and for a long time. Right. So we bought them in young, highly skilled, highly educated. It was a good, solid tax base. They were contributing. That's not the case anymore. And so and to Pastor Art's situation here, they bring them in and then they give them the ability to vote. And are you going to vote against the hand that feeds you? Of course you're not. Right? They haven't integrated into society. And so now we have an issue where it's become political. It hasn't become even economic. It's just pure politics that's driving the system.
And you guys both just did a remigration ad read without even knowing it. Do you know that?
I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was doing.
And
you got to give me more credit than that, Jason. Come on.
And Jeff pointed that out too, is remigration. Like, we all have to be realistic with remigration. Is we're not going to see 4th and 5th generation Canadians get booted out of the country. Remigration happens by cutting off the supply lines to the people that are weight on the system and causing the problems, like increasing crime. Like, these people should just be shipped the fuck out. There should be no second chances. There should be nothing. Like, right now, there's something like 13 individuals that are suspected of being part of like an extortion criminal syndicate. And they now applied for refugee status to protect themselves from being deported. That shouldn't even be happening. They should just be fucking gone. And that's what and the thing is like, remigration, you cast your net wide knowing that you need to capture a certain amount. Remigration can happen. It just requires, like Arthur was saying, it requires us to be Canadians, understand what it's like to be Canadian again, come together, understand our national values, what we grew up with, what we understand and know. And that's how it happens. Soon as we start applying pressure, that's when the change happens. Like, you know, Denmark has a very interesting stat out. So back in 1992, they let 321 Palestinians into the country. And then out of those 321 Palestinians, 200 of them ended up in their legal systems. 71 of those were jail, ended up in like extensive prison sentences. They had a total of 999 kids, and something 34% of those children ended up back into the legal system, and something like another 30% of those kids are on welfare. So like, this is a perpetual cycle, you know, that we have to eliminate before it becomes before it just gets way out of control. So Nico, when you said remigration can happen, it can happen. It's going to happen. And it's going to start when Canadians start standing up and we start just cutting off the tap and saying, listen, I'm not fucking paying for this guy to sit in a fucking hotel and get $200 a day while my family's fucking starving, right? While we're lined up in the food bank. So how remigration can happen, we stop this DEI nonsense. That has to go first. And then we have to cut off the supply lines. And then once those things start coming, we're going to start seeing the change. And in terms of immigrating high quality individuals into the country, we're not even doing that. You look at this doctor from Nigeria that caught multiple times now molesting his patients, grooming them, trying to turn them into his girlfriend. Like, there's a pharmacy that I used to do work for, and their clinic actually hired a doctor that they have to put a warning on their fucking door because of his inappropriate behavior with young girls. And the reason why this Saudi Arabia owned pharmacy hired him is because they knew they could get him for cheap. So it's like, when are we going to start implementing and putting our laws back into place? When are we going to start standing up? You know, there should be about 300 people outside that pharmacist door, you know, yanking that guy out of office. But the problem is we become complacent. I think, you know, a lot of you guys have pointed out that, you know, maybe men aren't being men, but we also have to shut the Karens the fuck up, because the Karens are the real problems. You know, I always say this: there's probably 100 people that have the same view as you, but because that one fucking Karen is going to bitch at the PTA meeting and nobody wants to listen to Karen bitch, they all just agree. And they just go home and have their beer. We got to stop and cut the beer out and just get right down to business. And so, yes, remigration is possible. We just have to build trust with, you know, we have to build back our nationalist values. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, let me just say something, Jason. I want to address just a serious problem before we go to a different problem. Nico and Jason too, we have to start working on your language.
Oh,
Definitely. We have to start working on your language.
No, absolutely not. Pastor, I
Uh,
worked in the corporate world for almost 2 decades, and I had to be careful about my language. This is my fucking content. I don't need to stop fucking swearing. I will swear if I want to. This is just who I am. I don't swear to make to it. This is just who I am. It makes sense. It's like an adjective in my vocabulary. But you know, Pastor, we probably agree on 90% of things, maybe more. I don't know, but
Well,
you're
I
a
would
different
say,
man than I am, and we talk to the different. We speak to different people. But that's just who I am, so it's never gonna happen.
I would say that your points would be more powerful without those add-ons. But I want to talk about politicians again because, and I have a serious question to the Canadians because, quite frankly, I do not understand you anymore. I do not understand Albertans as well. Why? And I'm just an immigrant that came here, for freedom and peace. But I just don't understand why you keep voting for the same people over and over again. For over 100 years, there has never been another party that won the election. It's like a game that I have witnessed when I was arrested and rearrested and imprisoned, the good cop and the bad cop. And if you're seasoned criminals like I am, you know what I'm talking about, where you're going to be, you're taken to the police station and there's always this, not a very nice police officer when you're being tortured, or like in my situation, I was put in metal cages and solitary confinement, concrete cells for days, or no water, no washroom, or being taken to police upside down like a piece of meat. But then your room will enter a nice police officer and he will ask you for a coffee if you want coffee or a sandwich, the good cop and the bad cop. And that's exactly the political system that I have observed for 30 years being in this country. And you've got conservatives, you've got the liberals. The liberals are scaring you with the NDP, and the conservatives will scare you with the liberals and then with the NDP. And that's the cycle that we're observing all the time. We have to vote. I was told so many times we have to vote for the lesser of two evils, and we have no choice. We have no option. And I want to just scream. I really want to just climb the tallest rooftop and just yell, what's wrong with you, Canadians? What's wrong with you, Albertans? Every single cycle, every single election that we have is we are lowering the bar. And so now our politicians are con artists and professional liars. They lie, they keep lying, then they come back and they lie again. You catch them on lies, and then they change their stories and they lie some more. And what do? We keep voting them in the next election. And my question is very simple. If you are so dissatisfied with what you're observing right now, well, you must change. You want the change in the country, in Alberta. But the problem is, if you are not willing to change, you have no desire to change, nothing will change. And that's the thing. Keep voting for the same parties, keep voting for the same people, and I guarantee you the same results. Because that's history. And the history is right here. The proof is in the pudding. In our country, for over 100 years, since the beginning of the Confederation, you only have two choices, the Uni Party. You either vote conservatives or you vote the liberals. Then 10 years or so later, it's a switch. The good cop becomes the bad cop, and the bad cop becomes the good cop. And then we do the same thing all over. And I'm thinking, when the people finally will understand that that's the problem, let's just, I'm not picking on the guy, or maybe I am, but, well, the proof is in the pudding. Pierre Poilievre, when he was running for office 20-some years ago, he said it so many times. His entire campaign was, we have to deal with the professional, life politicians, those that, use this as a gig for the rest of their lives. He advocated, before he was elected, for 2 terms. He believed, like I believe, that politicians should only be allowed to run for a limited amount of years, because if they don't, just like the judges, they will be corrupted forever. They will just be crooks forever, and there's really not much we can do about it. Professional crooks in the biggest mafia that there is, political and the so-called justice system. So when finally we're going to realize that the very people that locked us like animals, the very people that opened the borders to bring the biggest haters of democracy on earth, that want to rape our children, want to rape our wives and destroy our country and steal from us, those people, when we finally make a decision, never again I'm going to support a criminal organization called conservative government. I never again will support a criminal organization called the Liberal Party or the NDP. Never again, for what they've done to us. And even I'm talking about just the past 5 years. Forget about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, just the past 5 years. When are we going to finally say those people did this to us? They've murdered our loved ones. They locked our elderly. They didn't allow us to even say goodbye. They destroyed our economy. They they destroyed our Canadian dollar, and they are still doing it. They opened the borders that are finishing us off, and we still want to vote for them. That's something that I have a very hard time to understand. I can understand Nico's point that he needs to curse, because I was a construction worker. I can understand that. I don't like it, but I understand his point of view. That's his choice. It's not really hurting anyone except my ears, and that's fine. I can live with that. But if it comes to politicians that are robbing us and destroying us and raping our children, and they keep now murdering more Canadians in a history of our beloved country with assisted suicide and, of course, $100,000 slaughtered children every year, and we keep voting for them, that's something I have a very hard time, a hard thing to understand, because there has to be a time where we, the people, will look at our political arena and say, listen, Nadine was running for office. Why we didn't elect her? Because if you know history, I teach history, so that's a big thing for me. If you look at the historical accounts, every new political party, the underdog, the little party that no one really cared about at the beginning, if you're going to give a chance to a new political entity, you know what happens historically? They're going to work their butts off for you. They're going to outdo themselves. You know why? Because they will have to prove it to you that they were the right choice, because they want to be reelected. So the first 3 cycles, I would say about 15 years, the first 15 years of the new political entity, you're going to be extremely blessed and protected. And then the corruption will kick in, because there are humans. I quite often joke that the best politician that I would like to see as the prime minister is my dog. My dog would do a better job than all of those politicians combined together. Why? Because my dog doesn't want to hurt you. My dog, you feed my dog and he loves you, and he's very loyal and faithful. He's a nice dog, and when he hears something or he sees something, he barks. He does his job. Our politicians don't do their job. They actually do the opposite. So anyway, I want to throw this. If you want to have a solution to a problem of Islam, if you want to have a solution to a problem of corruption, if you want to have a solution to open borders, all those different things, you must understand that those people in power that you have been electing for the past 100 some years, 120, 30 years, are the very reason of what we are observing right now. Full stop. Then, if you realize that, if you understand that simple truth, simple for me, not so simple for the rest of the people, I guess, then you will vote for anyone but them. You understand? I would vote for anyone but them. This cop, if was running for office, I would vote for this cop before I would vote for a conservative. Why? Because I refuse to vote for the people that were raping and stealing from us for the past who knows how long. I just refuse to cooperate with them. I refuse to vote for the people that hate me so much. They hate my children, and they hate the future that I was promised for my children and their children. We must stop doing the same insane thing, expecting a different result. If there is a new political party, vote for them. If we, the good people, let's say you see yourself as a good person, if all the good people would vote for someone else, the underdog, I believe the underdog would eventually win. I believe that we will have a new political party that would actually start working for us, implementing those different changes. We have failed in all the 7 mountains of influence. Education system failed. We are not educating children. We are indoctrinating children. Healthcare system failed completely. We're now murder people that are hurting. Politicians are crooks and liars. Justice system does not exist. You mentioned Derek Reimer. What they're doing to this man, it's unbelievable. What I witnessed from the courts, I'm with him. I go to the courts. Karen Morley, the crooked judge of Alberta, she stops this man in the middle of his submissions. She's not even allowing him to finish his claim, and she kicks him out, escorted by the sheriffs. This is insanity. This is Soviet-style show trials that we are witnessing right now. Tamara Leach, Pat King, Chris Carver, Tony Olenek, what they did to me. I mean, there's hundreds, thousands of Canadians that are hurting in the so-called justice system, and all of this is done to us by the politicians. The politicians, all of them failed us. So how long are we going to put up with this? That's a question that I have, because if we really want to change, if we're looking for solution, all of those people out, new system, new people, judges out, crown prosecutors out. We need to rebuild our society from the scratch with checks and balances and accountability, because there is no accountability. Jason Lavigne, you were with me during the trials, the four-man and the trio, and you witnessed the lack of accountability. No checks and balances. We're being run by the biggest mafia that there is, the justice system, with the support of the crooked politicians. So solution is there, and we have the solution. We have the power, people. We are the power. The moment people's eyes and ears will be open, who is the real villain, who is really doing this to them and their children, we're going to get our country back. And I'm telling you, I know that a lot of Albertans are looking for the referendum and independence, but you're going to replace one crooked government with what? With what? With the same people, with the same crooked government, and then Alberta will be called the Republic of Alberta or whatever. But you will still have the same crooks in power. To clean the land, you have to get rid of the corrupted people. And then you have to implement the checks and balances and bring some sanity back into the system. Or it will be just a repetition of history. I mean, you will replace the head, but the body, the foundation, if you will, is rotten to the core. So, we must change. It starts with us. We, the people, we must change. And when we change, then the system will change.
Arthur.
Okay, so on that note, I'm going to throw it to Nico for like 30 seconds about change. And I think you should have a quick response to this one, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, it's just to address your swearing comment, because I get this one all the time. I get a lot of people that don't follow me, don't like my swearing, and that's why they don't follow me. But at the end of the day, Arthur, the reason I swear the way that I do is because I'm fucking pissed off. I'm tired of this fucking country being where it is. And I'm not meant... I do God's work, not the same type of work you're doing. I'm addressing a completely different type of audience. I'm addressing the people that are like me. They're pissed off. They're fed up. And they are swearing every single day because they cannot believe that this is Canada. This is why I'm swearing. My God, flip tables. I don't want to flip tables. I want to fucking break those tables. I'm tired of having weak men out there running the country. And I will swear on every single rooftop if that's what it takes to wake people up. But you have to understand, I come from a drug background. I was an addict. I was an alcoholic. I was very uneducated. I had a very interesting life. So I'm not the average political commentator or Christian. And I don't want to be. I am that guy that will swear to wake people up. So I really respect your opinion, but if I have to swear, I will swear, because I don't do it on purpose. It's just I'm pissed off. I'm really fucking pissed off.
And you should be, Nico, because we have to understand this is not just about our paychecks. It's not about money. It's not about finances. They are coming after our children, and that's changes the fight completely. They're coming after our children. They're coming after our grandchildren. They're coming after our future. So when I was in Quds at the border, I look at the kids running around. I mean, so dangerous, right? Kids running around. And I said, Canadians, if you don't want to stand up for yourself, fine. But please do it for those children. Stand up for the kids. Because what kind of a country they're going to have tomorrow? I mean, today we are deciding what kind of future they're going to have.
Amen to that, brother.
Fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. And Nico, thanks for clarifying that. Two different audiences. You're pissed, and absolutely hear this all the time. I did want to kind of answer the question before, though, because I didn't jump in there and give it to you. And I think the answer, in my eyes, is strong fathers, fatherhood, and children. You need to have lots more children, and you need to be there for your children and grow little men. I call my guys little men all the time. They open the doors for people. They're polite to anybody around. Little Jacob will go around and hug and spread his love everywhere because he respects people, and he's 9. You got to raise little men, and you also got to know what you're up against. So let me bring this little video up here, because quite frankly, when the other side talks and they tell you what they're up to, you should be listening to it. So let me bring this little clip here to you, because this is very important. This is a unfettered, raw response to what they're doing, what they're actually doing here.
There's no sound to your video, brother.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. I muted because I was trying to cue it up without messing up the show. So hold on, let me just bring that back.
To see Sharia law in Canada replace Canadian law?
At some point it will, because we have families, we are making babies. You're not. Your population is going down the slump, right? Yeah. And by 2060, according to Pew Research Institute, your research, by 2060, Muslims will be the biggest religious group the world over. What are you going to do then? Actually, are you going to oppose Sharia even then?
Well, you know what? I'm very appreciative of the honesty. We don't usually get that. So you do support Sharia. You do want a Muslim majority nation in the West End, correct?
Just like you had a Western majority nation in the land of Native Americans, one day we can have a Muslim majority nation here in Canada.
So when they tell you what they're doing, you pay attention, and they're very clear. We're not having babies. Okay, we're not having enough babies. The birth rate here in Canada has now dropped to 1.2. 1.2.
Actually, Jason,
so
let me correct you. It's negative. For Canadian born that were not born from immigrant parents, it is in the negative. It's -1. I did a calculation. It's absolutely insane. We've lost over the past 10 to 20 years. The only reason that we still have that just under two kids per family is because of immigrants are having children and we're not. It's insane.
Okay, so fair enough. So that definitely makes it worse, because that's Canada, which is all of Canada, but it's 1.2, and it's even worse when you factor in who's having those babies. But this is what we need to do. We need to have fathers back in the homes, raise young men, and have lots and lots of babies. Otherwise, as he said, according to our own data research, 2060 will be replaced completely here in Canada, a Muslim majority, and they want Sharia law. So, Jeff, I want to come to you. You've been super patient hanging out. It was actually your turn a few times ago, but I want to come back to you on that one, because what are your thoughts? Is there a way to turn this around? What do you think of a remigration? Jason, I'm sorry if I say it wrong. I apologize. And I'm not going to swear about it, but here we go. Jeff, what are your thoughts there?
I think basically the same principle applies. Like, a lot of these people depend on social programs, and if we just cut them off, then a lot of this stuff will kind of clean itself up. And I agree with what Jason said about the NGOs. Just cut off all of the NGOs. Trump is talking about banning CARE now as a terrorist organization. They're Muslim Brotherhood affiliated, and we had CARECAN here in Canada. They're called the NCCM now, the National Council of Canadian Muslims. But I don't think that they're going to wind up on the terror list anytime soon. I was surprised that they put Sammy Doon on there, to be frank, but relieved at the same time. So, in addition to turning off the money fire hose, we're going to need like a joint CBSA, RCMP, CSIS, CAF task force to clean up a lot of this terrorist and organized criminal activity. There are plenty of places where those two things intersect as well. Probably going to need some help with the Americans on that one because the RCMP and CBSA are compromised, in my view. CSIS, I know a lot of people think that they're corrupt, but I don't think that I'm as worried. I'm not really that worried about them. I'm worried about RCMP and CBSA. So yeah, it probably takes some help with the Americans on that one too. In terms of birth rates, people talk about, some of the well-known concepts in Islam in terms of bringing the world under Sharia, but some of the lesser known ones are things like, I think Pastor Artur mentioned taqiyya, like a noble lie, essentially a lie for the purpose of advancing the faith. And so it's perfectly holy to lie to unbelievers in pursuit of conquest. And hijra is another one, which is basically conquest through migration. It's named after the pilgrimage, like from Muhammad's home in Mecca. He was banished and he went to Medina, and that's where he really built his following over a number of years before going back and eventually conquering Mecca. So that's known as the hijra. And so the idea is that you travel somewhere else, you build a following, you have a bunch of kids, you convert unbelievers, this kind of thing. That's also basically, I guess, part of a broader jihad. So there are these other forms, and there's the lawfare. We're talking about some of the finances being changed. Lawfare lawsuits that they use to silence people who write about the kind of things that they get up to here in Canada, especially Muslim Brotherhood. And now we're absolutely polluted with them, Hamas, and there's 60 ISIS fighters who came back, and Pakistani Islamists perhaps being directed by ISI, and of course Iranian IRGC are quite active. They're very active. So even the diaspora populations, like a lot of people fled Iran. That's how people came here initially. And these kinds of diaspora communities are sounding the alarm. Like, we fled oppression in our homeland, and now you're bringing our oppressors here. Ditto for the CCP, right? I mean, and United Front Work Department, we're absolutely polluted with those people as well. And with what just happened with the floor crossing there the other day, holy smokes. That looks like it's got the CCP's fingerprints all over it, especially in Markham, where that was where what was his name? Joe Tay apparently had a bounty on him, and his liberal opponent, his name escapes me right now, but he was Paul Chang. He was telling the diaspora that they should take Joe Tay to the consulate to collect the $1 million bounty that the CCP has on his head. And this is at a time when they've already executed 4 Canadian citizens this year, the CCP, that we know of. So, and now we have this same riding, essentially. There are 2 different ridings, I think, in Markham, but in Markham, which is also believed to be the international headquarters for the Big Circle Boys, the biggest of the ethnic triads. That's where they had that big casino bust during COVID. And, now we have this guy who has been quite vocal and very oppositional with the Liberals, and voted against the budget, and went to the Christmas dinner, and then all of a sudden flipped and went to the Christmas dinner with the Liberals. Like, I think somebody got to him. I think he was
I think he was a plant. He's Team China.
Could be, and there are a lot of photos of him apparently hanging out with, United Front Work Department types. So, but it's tough to say, really, I think at this stage. But yeah, that is how they operate. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
okay, so this is a broader issue of foreign interference that you're bringing up here, Jeff. And yeah, when you see conservatives crossing the floor, and by the way, he never paid for his conservative Christmas party ticket. He didn't bring a gift for the Secret Santa, but he took one with him. That's the kind of guy this was. Very next day, he crosses the floor. So Nadine, as we were making our way through this last little segment here, be real, be raw, be angry, be a man. What do you think? Is this part of the solution?
It's certainly not part of the problem. So, it was so funny. The other day I was sitting here and I was thinking about, the message. You need to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, right? There needs to be truth and deliberation in all that we do. And I was thinking the other day, how do you help people discern, the right path from the wrong path, and this comes down a little bit to the Christian question, because in Christ's principles, which is what I try to live my life by, I was raised Catholic, but I really don't care whether you're Catholic, Protestant, whatever. To me, it's about what the Bible says, right? And so many churches today, so many faiths all the way around don't actually live the word of God, right? They're trying to change the word of God to fit their beliefs. It's my truth, not the truth. And that's, I think, a big underlying problem in society. So I was trying to sit down the other day and I was thinking about what are truly like those Christian principles. And, if Christ is life, he was the resurrection, right? The salvation. And if he's life, then what's the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of that would be death. Right? If he's the way, then the opposite of that would lead us astray, away from God, right? He leads us toward God, then everything else leads us away from God. I was thinking the light. If he's the light, because he says, I'm the light, the truth, and the way. If he's the light, then what's the opposite of that? Darkness. If he's the truth, then what's the opposite of that? Lies. So there is no place, in my opinion, in a fair, just, free society for lies. So if it's the Muslim faith that says it's okay to lie, well, the Christian faith says, no, it's not okay to lie. Our God, our Savior has said, no, it is not okay to lie. It is, you must tell the truth, speak the truth. So, for people who want to sit and think about, discernment, how do I find the right path? Am I making the right decision? Maybe look at it from as simple as that, because we are not fighting flesh and blood. We are fighting, the powers, the principalities, the spirit, right? It is a heavenly battle. And so when I think about all those things, not everybody has the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So how do we help them discern, the right way from necessarily the wrong way? And if we believe in truth and honesty and peace and all these things, then we shouldn't be promoting and or making excuses for people who do the opposite. Right. So I've started to take a look myself at things from a perspective of Christ principles, not even Christian, just call them Christ principles, and the anti-Christ principles and the spirit of the world in which we live. And so, if that helps people, because things are going to get worse, unfortunately, I believe, before they get better. And to a certain extent, I think they have to, because people just don't see it. I talk to people every day in BC even, and everybody here knows what's going on in BC with land claims and Aboriginal rights and all of this mess that's been created. And most people go, oh, that'll never happen here. It's like that they're still in this. It's already happened. Things that have already happened, people are refusing to acknowledge them or see them for what they are. So I think things are going to get worse, but, hopefully conversations like this, it's not coming at things from a perspective of, trying to be racist. It's just having the debate, having the conversation, being realistic, being raw, being truthful, on all sides. And, hopefully at some point, more people, to Artur's point, more people wake up to, okay, if we don't stand and create what we want, then unfortunately we're going to have to accept what we get. And that's not good enough for me. My dad taught me you leave things better than what you found it. And, I have a daughter, in which case right now I look around Canada and I truly am concerned. It's like, unless she wants to be some sort of government employee, really, what opportunities lie here for her? So, those are things that people need to really start addressing. And unless we get honest about it, to your point, Jason, raw, real, right, then it's not going to happen.
Now, Jason, we come to you next. We need to fight the media as well, because they're the ones lying to everybody about this. And when a nation is under attack and the system is not helping them and it's not fighting back, the people have to get up and fight back. What we're seeing all over the place is things like this. And here's what the CBC calls it. Why experts say a white nationalist rally in London, Ontario this past week and won't be the last. And the demonstration lasted approximately 30 minutes, according to police. But what is it that they're talking about? That picture. We've all seen this all over the place now. Now, you understand what this means. This is not a threat of violence. This is a wake-up call, is the way I look at it here, Jason. And people need to understand this is part of the path forward, is when the system breaks down, you're under attack. The people stand up. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's people have their mixed opinions on that event on both the left and the right. But the reality is a lot of the individuals on the left that are orchestrating, the real violence, they're covering their faces too, right? Mm-hmm. And these individuals here, they have lives to protect. Like, they have families, they have kids. These kids are in schools. They have jobs. So what that there is it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It got people's attention. It got people talking. It got people asking about what remigration is. And like, you may not agree with some of the more extreme viewpoints of, maybe Alex, right? One of the people behind it. But the reality is if we can understand that, we want our country back. And unfortunately, these guys have been pushing the needle on political topics and have gotten people to talk because of what they've been doing. And that's why I respect what they're doing, is because they are pushing that needle. They are pushing that boundary, and they're forcing people to talk. And then you look at the media, they embarrassed themselves. They had to offer retraction because they called them World War II Nazi stormtroopers. Right. So it just showed their incompetence on a whole new level. So it's just, by doing these sorts of things and having that sort of bravery, by going out and just making people see, like, the ensign flag, right? Like, that's important. Like, people need to understand where our heritage comes from, right? Our political system was all built on Christian values. That is a fact. When they wrote in those documents, under the eyes of God, or when they, exactly what God they were talking about, because there weren't Muslims here. There weren't Jewish people here. This was a Christian founded country. And this is what we have to understand. This is what we have to get back to, because I can tell you right now, like, I was born in the 80s, but I could tell you through the 90s, this is night and day what we're dealing with. And I cannot believe that our country has turned into this. And it goes back to, like, weak leadership. You guys have said it, weak men. That's another example. And these are the same men that are going out and putting themselves out there, and then they're being browbeaten by both the right and the left. It doesn't make sense. It makes literally no sense to attack these individuals, because here's the thing, is if we're on the right and we're talking about freedom of expression, I don't agree with everything they say, but I agree with some of their messaging. And I think some of their messaging is important to get us back to a Christian-based country with the priority of nationalism over multiculturalism. And that's what I appreciate about their messaging. And as long as we continue to browbeat and beat these guys in the ground, we're doing the work for the left for them. They don't even have to lift a finger, because we got people that are so scared on the right. Like, you know, some people are just like right away, this is a federal operation, right? Well, that's just fucking nonsense. Sorry, Pastor. Now I'm mindful of my language. Sorry, but it's just, we have to stop doing that, because here's what's interesting. Do you guys ever notice that the left doesn't need Antifa? Do you notice how they just don't acknowledge them? They just let Antifa do their dirty work for them. Yeah. And then it sends us into these tailspins and these arguments, and like they're just like, oh, just let them eat themselves. I'll tell you one thing, the left is way more organized than we are. They're way more intelligent in how they're dealing with us. And we are just like scattered. And we got to stop that. Just because I don't agree with one thing this person says doesn't mean that we don't have 15 other things in common that could bring us together. Like, Jay, I'm sure you and I don't agree on everything. I'm sure, Jeff, I know Jeff and I don't agree on everything. I'm pretty sure we've even had like a difference of opinions on things. But the whole thing is like, one is I've never been disrespectful to Jeff in a way that ever made him want to block me or unfollow me or anything like that. And I think that's what's important. I think that's what we need to get back to. And soon as we find those boundaries again, soon as we unite as the right, and because here's the thing, bad ideas always die and the good ideas always thrive. And soon as we understand that, that's when we'll find our groove, and we'll be unstoppable. Because here's the thing, we don't need government money. They are always begging the government for their projects and all that. And we're paying for it. We're paying the Anti-Hate Network. We're paying these organizations. But you saw what the Freedom Convoy did. It raised what? $10 million twice in like a couple of weeks? That's because we're the working class. We pay the bills, right? And soon as we understand that, that's when people really get our strength. Is like, we do have the power. We just have to learn how to harness it.
Well, and in a few weeks, Bill C9 is passed. You guys will all share your
Nadine, we're running
one
low
another.
time, so.
And I'll be the only person, the only female in my cell all by myself.
Don't worry, they're gonna mix us all up in the gulag. They don't care about that, Nadine. We'll all be good buddies. It's a good group here. And we're not gonna block or unfollow
the new
each other.
high-speed rails.
I like to throw it on that. I think that the masks are a bad look and gives the left all kinds of fodder to throw at us. And it's hard enough to talk about immigration already. But I showed my face on the CBC on stage and talked about it and actually forced the issue. They did a whole round of questioning for all of the candidates during the 2025 election in Sydney Glace Bay, even though it wasn't on the potential topics for debate before they were distributed beforehand. So
no, I understand, Jeff.
There are plenty of much more productive ways to advance the agenda of immigration. And I think,
can I ask you something? No, can I ask you something though? Mm-hmm. How do you your living was obtained through military service, correct? Mm-hmm. And you're being paid a pension, correct?
Right.
So showing your face doesn't harm you in any way.
But those guys covering their faces does. It makes it harder for me to do my job to talk about immigration as a politician.
But they do,
because that's what that look does to the issue. It puts that stink on it. They got the title and everything that says white nationalists. And I go out and I get called a racist all the time, but it doesn't have to be any harder, right?
But this goes back exactly to what Nadine was saying. We have to stop fucking caring about the political arguments. We have to just be men. We have to stop fucking giving them, you know, shit to chew on. We have to
No,
stop.
but Jason, I got to stop you on this one because I lost my whole livelihood over the COVID mandates because I decided to tell my boss to go fuck himself that I wasn't putting poison in my veins. Yeah. I never hid my face. I said exactly what I meant the way I said it now. And I agree with Jeff. I don't like people that hides their faces. I lost everything over this because I chose to. This was a choice. So I agree with him 100%. I know some of the stuff they preach out there that I don't agree with, but unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you see it, I agree with some of the stuff they talk about. But I will never hide my face. See, my face is right here.
No.
I will never. But no, but all I'm saying, we should just kill the subject because we're way over time already. Well, but all I wanted to say is the optic. It's just the optic.
If I
hold on,
I
Nadine.
I don't
hold on, Nadine. Just let me finish. All I'm saying is you're playing the same game as Antifa, for example, is playing. And we know that the reason they hide their faces is because they're cowards. I'm not saying that the people you just showed on the overpass are cowards. That's not what I'm saying. But automatically, this is what people will believe. It's all about belief. People need to see. Yes, exactly. You start from a place of... You start from a negative place when you should start from a place of positive. Because if you agree with their message, and you're going to find a lot of people that agree with them, why hide your face? What's the point of hiding your face if it gives you a negative image from the get-go? That's all I'm saying.
Right, but I'm not defending anybody on this one here, but I think we're being super superficial over this particular issue. And ICE down in the US have to wear masks now because they get exposed and doxxed, even though they're doing legal work. That's very good down there. They had to take a position of we do have to hide our face because we have families. And this is a legal government agency who's doing the right job. So I totally understand why somebody would take extra precautions. I think if we're going to denounce an entire group based solely on a uniform or the face mask, then we're missing the whole point here. I'm not going to defend this group, and I'm also not going to challenge this particular panel on this issue. But if you're going to make that kind of argument that you can't hide your face, what about ICE? What about the police? Forget about Antifa. What about legal enforcement and law enforcement who has to do it? Because,
but I'm not saying they can't.
But it's solely for the reason that the left will go after the families. If we were dealing in a war that had fairness on both sides and you like left the families off and you just, took it to the battlefield, that'd be a different conversation. We're not dealing with the left that has sanity. They will go after the family, the children, the schools. This is what they'll do if they know who you are. So
all I'm saying is if you're not willing to show your face, then just don't do it because it makes it harder for guys like me to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, but you're strong enough to.
Nobody's making them do it.
It's a superficial label from CBC.
All the things that you're saying, okay, fine. Let's just say that I accept them. Don't do it.
Don't do what?
That's an option too. Just don't go out there with a mask on your face. Like, if you can't go out and protest for let's just say I accept all the reasons you just gave me. If you can't go out and protest without showing your face, then just don't go out and protest.
No, I would disagree with that because. Yeah, but that's being superficial because why can't they go protest and protect themselves? And again, listen, Jeff, I'm not a fan of this group. I don't want to get into the private side of it, but I'm not a fan of this group. But all I'm trying to highlight here is CBC makes a headline, and then we're all worried that headline is going to be dragging us into it as well. Forget that. That's superficial. This battle is deeper than that. So we may do this panel again just on this subject because I think
I was going to say that. We should. We definitely should. That was the next thing I was going to say. We should have that conversation.
Because I think we just scratched the surface on this one. I think we really can get deeper in this one, Jeff.
Yep.
And I'm not an apologist, and I'm not even a defending of this group. But I did want to say, look, law enforcement has to hide their face in this particular climate because it is so dangerous and it's not fair. They're going after family. They're going after jobs. They're going after schools. They're going after children only because they can identify who they are. But anyways, I think we should do this one again, maybe in the new year, and we'll deep dive into this because Jason, I know that you have some good insights on this. Jeff, I absolutely respect where you come from on this one. And I think there's a couple more panelists that I think we can bring on, which will assist on this one a lot. Someone like Donald Best, who will tell you when you go undercover, you got to hide your identity and you have to do things a certain way in order to get the job done. So, protecting our identity has been something that has to been done for a long time in order to get the dirty work done. In
and
either
we
case,
need help. That's the thing, Jeff, and it doesn't matter. We're not one person. We're just one person. It's like we need everybody to stand up. And if this is how they need to start to stand up and they want to protect their families and their friends, then, I think that's very important to not discourage people from doing these types of things, because we are one person. Yes, you may have a following. I've been in politics for a long time. I've been in finance for a long time. I've worked in aerospace and defense, and we all have our issues. But again, this is where a little bit of, we need to understand that everybody else is not us. And everybody else has different concerns. And I've never hidden my face, ever. I'm willing to come on to panels like this and have tough discussions. Why? Without a mask, fully exposing, because I'm here to learn. I'm here to express an opinion. I'm here to hopefully encourage the debate. But if somebody has to start the conversation by maybe not fully, being
forward,
exposed to all the hatred on both sides, because this is what happens. This is what the conservatives do. Oh, if you can't show your face, then don't show up. And it's like, then what happens? They don't show up. And guess what happens? We're the ones then going, nobody showed up to help support us when we needed it. So I think we have to be very careful, because it is very dangerous times right now. People are not rational. I think you're going to see more and more violence, and it's not necessarily going to be taking out directly against you, but it can be taken out directly against your family and or your children. There's a reason I don't show pictures of my daughter, right? She doesn't come to events with me. There's things that you just, my life is my life. But if something came to be that I put her in jeopardy, that's a lot to have to live with, So it's like, maybe we need to, here's maybe the woman aspect of it, be a little bit more compassionate before we tell people just then don't do it. We need all the help we can get. So whether it's right or wrong, let's not place the judgment, and let's accept the help for what it is, and let's build to improve maybe on it, as opposed to discouraging it altogether.
Thank you for speaking up there, Nadine. And I think we definitely are going to reconvene another panel here, Jeff,
Yes.
and Jason and Nico. And there's a couple more I have in mind that would be very helpful for this conversation on both sides. So Nadine, thanks for that. Then Nico, can you have the final thought, and we'll wrap up, and then I'll remind everybody about our episode tomorrow.
Yeah, and because I get the chance to wrap up, I'm just going to add to what Nadine is saying by simply addressing the marketing aspect of it, because that was my point. You do whatever you want. If you want to wear a mask, that's on you. But I don't have an opinion. All I'm saying is, from a marketing perspective, if you're trying to sell a certain idea, and when I say sell, I'm not saying that you're trying to cheat people into believing what you're saying. All I'm saying is, if you're trying to put that idea out there, it's harder for people that are not necessarily involved or understand to see the mask portion, because it is the first thing that you see is the mask. So it will play against whatever movement it is, right or wrong. That was my point. But I agree, Jason, we need to have a conversation about this. I was going to text you after the show, but thanks for ruining the surprise for the people out there. We will definitely have, yeah, exactly. We will. I want to have that conversation, because we need to have those tough conversation. I would welcome some of the people that were there, if they're ready to talk on camera. I would love to hear what they have to say. I know, Jason.
I can.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and that's the whole point. I like to have hard conversations. I might not agree, but hey, that we need to have that discourse. This is the whole point of this show. At least this is the conversation we had, Jason, when we first started it, and I think we're sticking to it. But that's the whole point. And I meant Jason Lavigne, not Jason number 2.
Okay.
So here we are, guys. We're at the end of the show. We're over time. So thanks for sticking with us. Thank you for every single comment that we have, for all the people that stayed around, that watched the show. Please follow everybody that's on the panel. We all had our name next to our name. So find us, follow us. Because if there's one thing I know about the people in this panel, is that we all speak the truth. So make sure to follow us. Guys, tomorrow we are doing a live stream from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mountain Time or 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time for Pastor Artur Pawlowski and the work that he does with the homeless population in Calgary. Show up, just encourage, and if you have the means, support, because it is a fundraiser. So
No, I just
that
wanted
is
to
all,
throw that on
Jason.
when we were
All
talking.
yours.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
Yes, and the Hate Network. It's not David. It's Greg Wycliffe and others who are putting that out there in Calgary on December 16th. They'll be showing with Artur Pawlowski, John Carpe, and some others. So go get your tickets. You can find that on Eventbrite for the Hate Network. Greg Wycliffe is going to be on the show tomorrow with Artur Pawlowski and a whole bunch of other guests and friends. I got about a dozen people who responded and said they're going to be there. The fundraiser for the homeless. Make sure you tune in, as Nico said, 4 p.m. to 8 Mountain, 6 to 10 Eastern. And absolutely, we got to support, the difficult situations a lot of people here in Alberta find themselves in all over Canada. There's political reasons, there's emotional reasons, there's psychological reasons, there's dependency reasons. But whatever the reasons, it's Christmas time. We're coming together to feed them all. And Artur, thank you so much for being here tonight. I absolutely love listening to you talk. I don't have the courage yet to interrupt you. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to be a man maybe next time and interrupt you. Jeff, I love you so much. You're one of my favorite people. And I absolutely like how you can take a stand and call people out the way they are. None of us hide our faces. I absolutely agree that hiding your face is a problem when it comes to the perception. But I also understand some of the reasons behind why it would be done. Jason, it's always great to have you on. You always bring the truth, and even apologizing to the pastor for a swear or two. That's the kind of character you are. I love having you on, man. And Nadine, you're one of my favorite people in the world. Doesn't matter if you're a female. That's not why you're here. You're here because you're wise. You have a lot to say, and you'll bring the truth as well. And you'll jump into hard conversations and have it with us. So I appreciate that as well. Nico, you're a brother from another mother, and I can't wait to hang out with you again. But we're going to be doing another panel, and it's going to be a good one. They always are. So thank you for your time, everybody, for being here. Make sure you share this out. You like it. You hit that little button, the bell, whatever platform that you're on, do it, because we should be back in a couple of weeks with another mashup. We'll see about the Christmas schedule. And as you just heard, we're going to put together a panel about Second Sons, what they're up to, and whether or not this is a good look, a bad look, the necessary look, or what we need right now. Everybody take care of yourself, love each other, and God bless.